Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 519. Our top 5 gateway game suggestions.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
The Meeple Nation podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Go to their website. They have some amazing product, and we love it. We love every aspect of it. We love every game that it holds, and we love that it holds every game. So go check them out, and you too can have a Game Topper in your home, and you will find out how much you love it at GameToppersLLC.com.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
I'm Douglas Stewart.
And I am Nathan Holiday.
Holla! Yeah,
Holla,
Nathan, holla!
Welcome to the family, Nathan.
It's going to be a rough night. I can tell already.
Howard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I forgot
Let me
what
just
I was
help you out there. It's Howard.
I'm going on 4 hours of sleep, 12 hours work day. My brain's a little fried. And I'm Nathan Howard.
That was awesome.
First try.
First try.
We would love for you to go over to our website. Check us out. We have links to all of our previous episodes. We have photos of some of our gaming experiences that we've had a lot of fun with. We also have bios of each of the hosts of Meeple Nation. And we have some awesome blogs that we would love for you to check out and read and give us your thoughts on them. Here at Meeple Nation, we love what we do. And we have been trying to make improvements to the podcast, and we hope that the improvements that we've made has made a difference to you and your listening experience. If you would like to help us further improve the podcast, we have a Patreon link on our website. Click that link, jump over to Patreon, and become a patron of Meeple Nation. We love our patrons. We thank you so much for your support, and we thank you for making it possible for us to make your listening experience more enjoyable and have more awesomeness coming your way. And if you have any questions or comments, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Email us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We have several listeners that have emailed us recently, and we love to hear from you. We love to hear your feedback and questions, and we love our listeners. So please email us at meeplenation@gmail.com.
All right, gentlemen. Well, it is time to get down to some brass tacks. This is what we've all been waiting for, to talk about our highlights, what we've been playing, what we're all juiced and jazzed up about this week.
It's so exciting.
It's so exciting. We love board games, and we're going to start talking about them. So, Nathan, what do you got on your highlights list this week?
I read like 6 rule books this weekend.
Nice job.
Wow.
So at some point I got to play them before I forget them, but I did go through. And the reason I got into this reading groove, my wife was sick, so I had a lot of free time this weekend. Not as a result, and maybe this is what made my wife sick. But on Wednesday we played first real session of Frosthaven. We'd gone through scenario 0, and then we'd finished scenario 1, which is kind of the, hey, you've made it to Frosthaven, everything is going on, and then you go through the whole process. And the nice thing about Frosthaven is the post-scenario changes that are different than Gloomhaven. So you get back and there's the outpost phase, and you have to go through you visited all the buildings in your villages as long as they're not wrecked. And before you get to that outpost phase, there's a whole raid. You draw an outpost event, and there could be a raid or anything that happens during that event which could damage your buildings.
Okay, so Nathan, this was a big difference between like Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, right? This is kind of one of the big things that it boasted, was this whole system where you had the town and you were going to build it up, and you could invest all your resources and some of your loot and everything in sort of building up the town, building its defenses, all that. So I know you're fresh in, but so far, what is your take on that? Like, is it a new, fresh, enjoyable thing, or do you pine for the days of Gloomhaven glory of old, where it was just read a card and then get on to fighting stuff?
Yes.
Is probably the right answer.
Yeah.
I don't know why I expected anything else.
I do enjoy the whole aspect of, you're building up your village and you're trying to reinforce Frosthaven, and the buildings will allow you to spend resources that you've gathered, and you can cache some of those different resources like hides, metal, lumber, herbs, anything like that you can store in Gloomhaven. It changes the way that you buy stuff and what is available and how you get improved gear. Right now, because this is the first time we've done it, I like it, but I'm hesitant that it might be something that just becomes more, it might become more work than the value it brings. So I am playing this with my wife.
It does seem like it's a lot of upkeep.
Yeah. And I am playing this with my wife. And so we did play Jaws of the Lion and very successfully, went very well. And we're into scenario 1, and it's already full of size because, and by size, I mean, because it takes a long time to set up. There's a lot of binding stuff. Where Jaws of the Lion, you open up the map, boom, put it down. So in her eyes, that immersiveness that the game provides is burdensome to her. I find it a little bit more exciting, but I am nervous that I am also going to find it burdensome later. So I'm concerned that getting to that Gloomhaven, that I'm going to miss that Gloomhaven where we're done. I can go, I can buy, I can improve my gear, and then move on.
It's like, now I got a bunch of fiddly, like, town management stuff to go through.
Yeah. I'm fearful that it's going to be something that's really going to bog down my wife, but I'm hoping that it is something that I like. I'm going to say today that I really like what it brings and the way that it provides that whole, there's a lot of video games, right, where you're doing that same thing, where you're getting stuff to build up your village, or you're interacting with this vendor, that vendor to get this or that. And it does kind of mimic that. But, again, I'm going to backpedal every time that I like it, but I'm afraid that it's going to be too much. I'm concerned that it's going to take away from the game more than it brings in, but I'm only into one scenario. I could be completely wrong about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm really curious to see how that goes and how your opinion of it changes. Because any game that asks you to invest that kind of time into that sort of system has to reward you to make you feel like it's worth it. Otherwise, it is a slog.
Yeah. And that's what I thought. I was up on the rules of Frosthaven. You went through and you skimmed through, and it's the beginning is, hey, if this is blue, this is a Frosthaven rule. Otherwise, everything's very similar to Gloomhaven. And I didn't even get halfway through the rule book because I'm like, yeah, I got this. And then we got to the end and I was like, wait a minute.
I don't got this.
I don't have this. And so that was, I was reading that, and it's like, I think it's 30 pages of the second half that is all new. Well, they say it's all new, but there's still a lot of similarity between Gloomhaven and Frosthaven in there. But
interesting.
But their new twist on it, and like I said, the outpost phase and how you level up and storing resources and gaining morale and gaining influence and gaining defense for your city, it really does make the game far more complex. But I can see it being a positive thing, and I'm hoping that the wear and tear that it provides my wife is not going to make the gaming experience a negative thing.
Time will tell.
Yeah, because I really did enjoy our first one, and she picked her first character because the character had green on it, had green hair, and my wife's favorite color is green, so she's like, I'm taking that one. And I'm like, okay.
It was the most complex character.
No,
in
it wasn't
box,
the most complex, but it was a medium complex, and she probably should have started with and so it was, we were through scenario 0, who was complaining about how hard it was, and then scenario 1 was we had more cards to choose from, because scenario 0 you don't use your full hand size. Scenario 1 you use your full hand size. And just to kind of get her used to it, I said we're not using any of the X cards, and then starting in the next scenario will allow us to filter in those X cards to provide some of that. She just get her used to those basic cards. And by the end of scenario 1, she was more familiar with her cards. She was happy that she could summon she's the Bone Summoner, I want to say. Can't remember if that's the name.
Sure. Sounds good.
Sounds good. It sounds like a nice character. If it's not in there, it should be in there.
It is now.
It is now, yeah. But she could summon skeletons, and then she could summon some sort of wraith or a wisp or something like that was allowed her to experience the game. And towards the end, she was getting it and found that as she discovered it, it wasn't as overwhelming as she thought. But
Good. Very good. No, I'm really curious to see where that takes you.
yeah, I am too.
Because Frosthaven is a big question mark for me, right? It's one of those where I'm like, I could get into it, I could play it, just don't know if I want to yet. So I'll be really curious to see how your play goes.
Yeah, because I mean, Gloomhaven we played a ton of.
Yeah.
I played through a long scenario with some friends before. We started over on Andy's. The four of us with Dave played, Dave and/or Logan played several. I mean, I think we played like 30 of those at least.
Pretty close, yeah.
And so I have like 70 Gloomhaven games under my belt. And it was, I was okay that it got put away.
Yeah.
We had other things. I would have liked to still finish it.
Sure.
I would have liked to have finished the campaign. Anyways, there's words in
It
there
was
that
too
matter.
long to finish.
And I'm
It
concerned
was so long.
Frosthaven's going to be the same.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't learn from the first go around. It's way too much.
Yeah.
It was the same with my group. We just got Gloomhaven fatigue.
Yeah.
And we were all about it. And I think, we were very similar, probably 60 games or something like that. And we were going strong. And then we just hit a point where we were like, okay, we're done. Like we've unlocked everything. We've retired a bunch of characters. We're kind of through with this experience. And so and that was like half the campaign. That was half the missions the game had in it.
Yeah.
It was like, that's silly.
Yeah. And that's the rules talk about that you're not going to go through all of them, and you can go through the campaign.
Right.
And not have, I think the campaign is like, if you follow the campaign strictly, I want to say it's 68.
Something like that.
But
it's still too long.
Yeah. And that is something that maybe my wife and I can do, but it's not something that we're going to be playing every weekend. Because, she will burn out really quick if it's something that we're doing every weekend. But if it's something that we can do, we can mingle in other games, get back to it, keep it fresh on our mind. I'm hoping that we can get through some of it. It might be a push and drag, but I'm hoping. We'll see.
Cool. Very, very good.
Well, we got to play a new roll and write game on our last game night. Richie taught us Rolling Realms.
This is one that I've had for a long time, so I was really excited that he pulled a game off my shelf of shame, even though he bought his own copy. But
yeah, it was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So it's a Stonemaier game, and it's a roll and write. So they have everybody's going to have a set of cards, and each of the cards is going to represent a different Stonemaier game. And you'll have 3 in front of you. Someone rolls the dice, and then you have to put a number on 2 different boards, or potentially both on the same board if you have the right resources. But I think they did a really good job making each of the boards play very similar to how the actual game is.
yeah, you had that feel in there.
For sure. It was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And
So Nathan hated the wingspan cards.
nice. He probably did.
Actually, I think I was confused at how the wingspan one worked until like halfway through. So I didn't score any points when we were playing with the wingspan card. I didn't, anyways, on the wingspan card.
I think you did that on purpose.
It could have been.
All of this checks out.
Yeah. But so this is a game that was developed during COVID
Oh, really? I didn't
when
know that.
everybody couldn't get close together. So, what's his name?
Jamie Stegmeyer.
Jamie Stegmeyer wanted to come up with a game that was able to be played virtually. So somebody could lay it out. Everybody could use some dice at home, or they would share the dice, but you could use one set and that game could be shared all over. And the nice thing about it too is you could also combine multiple copies of the game. And something that Richie was excited about was like, hey, let's get together. Let's put your copy and my copy together and do an 8-player game. And so all that kind of panned out. And then after the pandemic, it kind of went the way of the dodo, it seemed. And then Richie, like you said, has been on this big kick of finding and acquiring and testing out and playing roll and writes. And I'm glad he picked this up.
Yeah, maybe when I have to pick up, because I
Oh,
really
you
enjoyed
liked it.
I did. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I could tell that you really liked it. We had fun, and you went on about it for quite a while. So
Did I?
not a long time, but for Andy, yeah, I mean it was more than 2 minutes. So
Nice.
So I just looked it up on BGG. It currently has a 7.2 rating with
Oh,
a
really?
and it's only a 1.93 on the weight scale. So fairly light.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's really light.
So this is nowhere near the Twilight Inscription level.
No. How about you, Doug? What have you been playing lately?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Because I'm going to tell you.
All right.
I had the opportunity. I did a little traveling this weekend. Headed down to Arizona to visit a really good friend. We've known each other since before high school. We've known each other probably 30 years, something like that. Really good friends, lifelong friends. So went down and visited him and his family. Got a chance to spend some time and get caught up. But they're board gamers too. They enjoy games, so we got a few to the table. One of the games they had in their closet was Quacks of Quedlinburg. And I haven't played Quacks for a really long time. It's been probably a year or so since I've played Quacks. So we busted that out, and I've got to say, Quacks is still a great game.
Oh, it is a good game.
It's really, really good. And they had found these really cool cauldrons. So they were like a 3D printed cauldron that you set out on the table that held all of the chips for each type. So it had all these different cauldrons with the chips in it.
Oh, really?
So when you needed to take your chips, you could just grab the cauldron and kind of
fish through it.
Yeah, fish through it for your chip. And it was actually really cool. They had a very cool copy of it because they had deluxeified a few things. And it was a lot of fun. That Press Your Luck. I mean, it is amazing how you spend your potion, put the cherry bomb back in the bag, and mix it all up, and you redraw the cherry bomb 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, feels like it for sure.
I mean, right? Like every single time, it's crazy. And and sometimes I will say it feels like that game is out to get you. And there is a strong luck element, but it is always so fun to play.
That's what makes Press Your Luck games so much fun.
Yeah, I really do like it how the game, like even if your potion explodes or your pot or whatever, you still have the option of either taking points or buying chips. It's not a total loss. You still have plenty that you can do. I think the rat tails used as a catch-up mechanism are super ingenious and nice. And also, I think the expansions are great. We threw in the Herb Witches expansion, and I really like how simple that is, how easy it is to throw into the game, and yet how great, like the great addition it makes to the game.
Yeah.
You've just got those 3 coins to spend, but man, if you can time them just right, they will really give you a massive boost.
Yep.
And I love that simpleness to it. You know, the Alchemists I love, but it adds a whole new layer of complexity to the game. Herb Witches, I think, is one of those that's so easy to throw in and make such a big difference. So, I'm happy to report that Quacks of Quedlinburg is still great.
Yeah. Andy and I have both deluxeified the heck out of our versions.
We have.
We both have the plastic chips that
you have the geek up bins, right?
Yeah, the geek up bins.
Yeah.
So the bits that are all replaced, and then the crates that the chips are in, which has a divider in it to separate the 3 shapes or the 3 denominations, and the lid on there that you can flip up and holds the card for the version of the card you're using. Yeah. But those cauldrons sound really cool.
Yeah, they were legitimately very cool. Now, I did the time-consuming upgrade and went through and put all of my chips in coin capsules.
I did that too. Yeah, I did that too. And then Logan, like 2 years ago, bought me the
resin chips.
Yeah, the resin chips. But he only bought the expansion ones because he didn't. He just saw them and he's like, "Oh, I'm just going to grab those when we were at BGG," and didn't really realize that it was the expansion ones. So after that, I had to go buy the base ones, because you couldn't have that.
Yeah.
But that was after I had already went through the time of using those coin chips, those coin
capsules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have both those coin capsules saved in a drawer for when my resin chips run out or wear out.
Yeah. Because that'll happen. I guess you got to play a lot of Quacks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the picture that's printed on the resin does start to flake off after time, but you have to be using that game like
quite
every day.
Yeah.
So mine's going to last for a long time. But that's a great game. Yep. Glad you had fun with it again.
Yeah, I love that game.
Fantastic. Well, if you have no other highlights to talk about, I say we dive right in to the topic of the week, which is our top 5 gateway games.
You know, I was really excited that we are doing this topic this week because tomorrow I have a youth group coming over to my house for a game night, and many of those boys have not played games.
Yeah.
So it was perfect for me to get a list of all my games that are considered, lightweight games that I can be like, okay, yep, that one, pull out. That way I I'm not standing there in my game room like, okay, what are we going to play?
Yep, yeah.
Right? I have a list. We're all ready to go. I feel prepared for tomorrow. So double whammy for this episode.
Double whammy. That's nice. It's always nice to feel prepared. And I mean, that's the thing. I went through my list of games and I made a list of saying, okay, this is an easy game. This is an easy game. This is an easy game. And so I came up with a list of 30 right off the bat. And so as I was looking at that, I'm like, I really need a kind of an outside opinion of this. And so I asked my wife to give her opinion of these 30 games. Which games do you feel are games that are quick to learn, easy to play, and draw you back again and again? And so she made a list she went through and she's like, well, if I have to pick 5, and I said, yes, you have to pick 5. And so she made her list of 5 games that she thought. And so I removed those 5 out of my list and I chose a different 5 out of the list that was remaining. And I thought it was interesting as I was talking to her about this because us as gamers, I mean, I'm going to go to the game Silver and Gold. We've talked about that. And
Sure.
Doug, you recently picked up the Pyramid.
Yeah. Yep. Silver and Gold Pyramids.
Silver and Gold Pyramids, reimplementation of that.
Yep.
All of us, as we're talking about it, we enjoy that a lot more than the regular pyramids. And part of that discussion that we had was because we're more regular gamers, we're more, I'm going to use my air quotes there, serious gamers, we're professionals. That
I don't know who bestowed that title on us.
that we wanted a little bit more, meat in that game. We wanted it to be a little bit more evolved. So when we compare Silver and Gold Pyramids, we find Silver and Gold Pyramids far more appealing because it's a little bit more complex. And as I was looking at these gateway games, you kind of have to have that exact opposite feeling, right? You can't say, okay, well, this is a good game because it has some basic mechanics, but it has some strategy in it. And that's great for like a stage 2 gateway game. But as I was looking at it, and this is just my opinion, your guys' opinion may be completely different.
It probably is different.
Yeah. But I went through and said, okay, this is a game that is going to take, like referring to you, Andy, kids that haven't played this game, and to be able to teach them this game and have them say, that was fun, I want to play that again, which kind of dips their toes into that gaming hobby and then slowly gets them to want to discover more into this amazing hobby that we love.
I think that's a very good way of doing that. I look at my number 5, and it's my number 5. Specifically, that was the thought that went through my head, is very simple. Yes, there are versions of this game that are a little more complex, but this one's going on my list for exactly that reason.
Yeah, that was definitely my approach. I mean, I just think about the term gateway, right? I mean, it is the gate. Yeah. It's like, that's why it's referred to that, right? It's like, hey, we're gonna ease you in. This is where you get in, and then once you're in, it's like, hey,
first one's free.
There's a whole world. There's a whole world here.
This gate is a one-way gate.
Yeah.
But I definitely tried to focus mine on the games that welcome people into the hobby, that get them just pique their interest, right? Get them a little more interested in what it has to offer. So that was the approach that I took for sure.
And as we've been in the hobby for a while now, we have to kind of look and say, what games brought us into the hobby? For me, probably the biggest transition was Settlers of Catan. That interrupted my customizable card game night. It just kind of ruined everything. And then before I knew it, I was buying more board games than card games. And then I was avoiding card games like the plague and hoarding board games like some crazy person. Which is where I'm at now.
Which brings us to today.
So I'm kind of curious, what was, do either of you guys have a game that is like, this is the game that really sunk my teeth into the board game hobby?
Well, for me, it was Pandemic. So it was the original Pandemic game, and I had played a couple other games, and I had played Catan. But Catan was sort of one of those that was like, well, this is a hobby board game that I play from time to time, but it wasn't the one that was like, hey, board games are awesome. It was just a cool game, and it sat on the shelf, and sometimes we'd get it out. Pandemic was the one where I started to realize, like, okay, actually, board games are doing some really incredible things. There are some incredible systems at play that are creating a narrative and introducing a really interesting puzzle to solve and by throwing different information on the cards, by shuffling decks, by giving, a map and tokens and pieces and dice and all these different things, you can really create an experience at the table. And that was sort of the eye-opening moment for me. And from there, I dove in and there were other games very similar, gateway kind of games. I mean, Ticket to Ride, just because my family loved it and we played that a lot. And there were a few others in there. And then once I sort of started down the rabbit hole, it just kept going and going and going.
There's a rabbit chasm.
Yeah, it is. It's a rabbit chasm. You're right.
How about you, Andy?
Mine was probably Hero Quest.
You talked about this just recently.
Yeah, Hero Quest. So my friends introduced me. Actually, they introduced me to BattleTech first, which I thought was a lot of fun. But then the same friend introduced me to Hero Quest, and let's just say my eyes were the size of silver dollars at that point. I was like, "What is this? This is amazing. This is so cool." And that led to Battle Masters. It led to some other games. We were talking tonight, actually, before the show, that my stepbrother and I we would spend all weekend, and it was usually Hero Quest and Dragon Quest, and literally 3 or 4 days straight of just playing, usually Dragon Quest, nonstop.
That's awesome.
And I have a lot of fond memories of that. Yeah, it was definitely Hero Quest that I think that I can probably credit to my evolution from like Risk, Life, those types of games to games that definitely fit into a different category of excitement and immersiveness and just overall enjoyment, rather than just I'm going to move around a board or, the standard Parker Brother Hasbro games.
Yeah, and that evolution has changed, right? You go to a big box store now, the selection of board games that are on that shelf has changed a lot.
Totally different.
Yeah. And so that's I think that's what really inspired me to anyways, that really want to dig into this, is those games that brought us into the hobby. Catan, Pandemic are still around. Dragon Quest is more kind of a niche.
Yeah.
You're not going to find that around.
Hero Quest is still around.
Well, they just re-implemented that
they did,
too.
Yeah. What the funny thing is you think about those games and how eye-opening they were. And so I bought the original Hero Quest when the re-implementation came out, and I started playing it with my kids. I'm like, this is not near as fun as I remember it.
Yeah. Well, I think that was the designer of Return to Dark Tower.
Yeah.
That was the quote that they used, is they wanted to, when they were wanting to redo Dark Tower, that was the thing, is we want to make this game as fun as I remember it being.
Right.
Which they did.
Such an incredible design philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because often, I mean, nostalgia, it clouds our vision so deeply.
Yeah.
We just yearn to go back to some of those things. And then when we do, it's always so disappointing.
You're like, what was I thinking?
What was I thinking? I mean, we kind of recently talked about this with a lot of the G.I. Joe stuff and everything. And you can really get burned. But when you set out to create something as good as you remember it being, not as good as it was, as you remember it being, I mean, that's a winning philosophy right there. And that's kind of what you have to do if you want to bring some of these things back. Yeah. I will say this, though, that explains a lot. I think we now know why Andy loves his dungeon crawls so much.
That could be. It could be.
I'm sure we'll dig into that more in a couple of weeks, too.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive in. Without any further ado, number 5. Nathan, why don't you get us started?
It's Nathan Holiday.
Nathan Holiday. Get us started.
What? My number 5 was Railroad Inc. I think these games are very accessible, and there's a lot of roll and write games that are very accessible. But the fact that this one is something that you can open a second box, you can expand it to different players, and you're just using the one set of dice, everybody's rolling it, and it's just, you're going to roll it, you're going to have either a train track or a street, and you're going to plot it out on your board, on your grid, and try to make as many connections as you can, leaving the least amount of open connections to try to fill in the center, do all these little nuances, very simple to teach, but it's not like tic-tac-toe. There is skill, there's something that is challenging, and for me, when I think about these games, is it's not just a mechanic that's nice, but it's a mechanic that goes, hey, I want to try that again. And I think Railroad Inc., all the Railroad Incs, they're quick and easy to learn and easy to play, and then that desire to play those again just is very strong. And so Railroad Inc. in any of its colors is something I look forward to, and that made my number 5.
So what was Cheryl's number 5?
Her number 5 was Lost Cities.
Nice.
I'm not going to go too much into hers since she's not here to. If she wanted to let you know about her feelings, she
Lost Cities is a terrible choice.
Well, I'm just curious because you omitted them from your list, so I didn't know if any of them maybe they would have made your top 5. So.
And it was kind of funny. Almost all of her top 5 were games that we play regularly on PGA.
Oh, really? Nice.
But all but one.
Nice.
That's awesome. I also like Railroad Inc. that it has so much diversity. You've got all the different versions with all of the different expansions, and the expansions are rated like easy to hard. So it's great for introducing new players because you could just stick to that core box and the core dice and have a great time introducing new players. But at the same time, you can make it more and more complex by introducing those green and yellow editions that have some extra objectives and maps and things like that. And then you start throwing in the expansion dice and it gets even more complex. So you can gamify it if you need to, which I like a game that has that diversity, that has that range, so to speak.
Nice. Well, my number 5 has several versions of it, like I said before. And this is the simplest of those versions, and that is King Domino. As far as all the different King Domino versions, Queen Domino is my favorite, but it's also the most complex, so that makes sense why it is my favorite. So if I have a choice of which one I'm going to play, it would be Queen Domino first, then King Domino Origins, and then King Domino with the Giants expansion, and then King Domino. However, King Domino is a game I've taught my little nieces and nephews how to play.
Yep.
It is so easy to grasp exactly what you're trying to do. You're just laying dominoes down, trying to match up terrain types, right? And trying to get crowns, and it's super easy to understand. I like the fact that as far as teaching kids games, this is one that falls into that category for me. And you can see, at least in my nieces and my nephews, one of my nephews in particular, when I've taught him this game, every time I see him, did you bring games? Did you bring games? Right. And it created that excitement. It's that gate, right? He walked through the gate of the gateway with that gateway game. Now he's excited to try more. And we did the Star Wars deck builder with him, and the kid grasped it super, super quickly. And he's only like 10, but he picked it up really fast. And I think the passion is growing in him as I watch him play more and more games. And he's really into the Star Wars miniatures war game, like the old version. Oh yeah, he has everything memorized.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so he has definitely, as far as his passion on games goes, have definitely grown, and it kind of started with King Domino, so it's been cool to see that progression happen.
Very nice. I think King Domino is great, specifically if younger kids are kind of the target of who you're playing with.
For sure,
I'm not 100% sure this one hits with adults all the time, and I like King Domino Origins just a little bit better. But this is a genuinely great gateway choice, especially for younger audiences.
My wife loves it.
Yeah, and so does mine. But I've also gotten this out with older, new to game people, and it's been kind of like not bad, but not what you'd hope.
Yeah.
You know? So I do think it's important to know your audience. My number 5, and I've kind of talked about this being a gateway game before. It always makes me smile and makes me chuckle just a little bit. But I'm telling you, it works.
It does.
It absolutely works. And that is Foundations of Rome. And I love the look on people's face because you're going to teach them a game and they're new to games and they don't know what's going on. And you pull out this massive, 50-pound box and you throw it down and you hand them this big tray and you start throwing the map and the cards and everything else out. And people's eyes grow big and they're like, I don't think this is what I signed up for. I don't want to do this. I want out. Where's my mom? And you kind of have that moment. But seriously, this game teaches in less than 5 minutes. It is so easy. In fact, the BGG weight on this is 1.97. It's not even above a 2. This is a really simple game. Now, you can add some expansion stuff and some alternate rules and some variations and stuff to make it a little more complex. But at its base form, it's great. You're just bidding on properties and placing your buildings out to cover those properties up, trying to score as many points and get money. And it just works so good. And the table presence and sort of just the visual and tactile impact that this game has on new players, I think really leaves them with an impression and can set a hook. I mean, I have absolutely seen this game set a hook in new players.
Yeah. I have too. My wife played it, and you described everything that she was feeling when you were starting to pull out that, because she is very much in the mindset, if the game box is big, or the bigger the game box, the more complex the game is. And she was trapped at AssaultCon and had the opportunity to play it. You taught it to her, so she didn't have the opportunity to backpedal and say, "Oh, I don't want to do this." And so I was giving her a hard time that I wanted other people to teach her games so that so I could play them with her later. And so she's caught on to my tactics, and now she's like, you should just teach me this game. But she very much enjoyed Foundations of Rome. In fact, I think she won.
Yeah, she crushed us.
Yeah, but she very much enjoyed Foundations of Rome. And if I ever find a gently used copy that has a greatly reduced price, I am totally picking it up.
Awesome. My number 5, Foundations of Rome. That brings us back around to number 4, Nathaniel.
All right, my number 4 is a very simple numbers game, and that's called Lucky Numbers. It's a 1 to 4 player game. For every player, you're going to throw in 20 tiles that are face down that are going to be 1 through 20. So if you have 2 people, there's 2 sets of tiles down there, 1 through 20. You're going to draw 4 randomly, set up and create a diagonal path on your board. And your board is 16 spaces. So you're going to try to place numbers. You're going to draw a number from the pool and either replace a number on your board or add that number to your board anywhere you want. It doesn't have to be adjacent to anything. The only catch is that number has to go in a sequence of every number to the left of it has to be lower than it on that row. Every number to the right of it has to be higher than it. Every number above it has to be lower than it. And every number below it has to be higher than it. And so that doesn't mean that you can't have the same number. You can totally have the same number as long as they're in separate columns and rows. And this game is one that my wife really likes. It's interesting as we've played this, how the discovery of the strategy has changed. Before it was just kind of, I'm just going to put this here, I'm going to put this here. And as we've gotten better at the game, whenever there's a discard, you're like, oh, I could totally put that up here. And instead of trying to make my rows like 1 through 5, 4, 6 through 10, 10 through 15, try to do that, you're going to really sometimes crunch those numbers closer, or you're going to make those numbers this huge gap to provide you more opportunities to fill in those voids. And I feel like the game does provide a lot more of a challenge the more you play it and the more you get used to it. And Lucky Numbers has been great.
Yeah, it was interesting because you brought this game to my wife when she did her intensives for her classroom. And so we played this with kids. There were also some adults there that were helping. You ended up having to leave this one among a couple others because people still wanted to play it. And after you left, I kept playing it with people because they kept requesting it. It was like, I want to play. No, I want to play that Lucky Numbers game. Let's play it again. And that's another cool thing about it is it's one of those that plays so fast and so easy. It's like, well, just throw them out and let's play it one more time. No, just one more time. No,
6 games later.
Yeah. And it really does. It just plays fast. You just pick a tile, like you said, you either swap it out, add it to your board, or you can throw it back. And you just do that until you either solve the puzzle and win or until somebody else does.
It's a great game.
Yep. I like it. Lucky Numbers. Andy, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Escape, The Curse of the Temple.
That's a good game. I'm surprised that one didn't make my top 30. King Domino did. Foundations of Rome didn't. But King Domino was on my top 30. But yeah, this is a great game.
It is. And this is the copy we own is actually my wife's copy. It's her only game that she owns.
Nice.
But she loves it. And I don't know if she loves it because it's just fun to play and she likes the anxiety that's created from it, or the fact that it's exactly 10 minutes long.
I think it's probably more that it's 10 minutes long because I don't see your wife as an anxiety-seeking gamer.
No, but I do want to point out that both of those things are true. It is 10 minutes and it is anxiety inducing.
Yeah. Very, very anxious 10-minute game.
Yes, it is. But the anxiety it creates, it's one of those, it's probably the game that I've played that creates the most anxiety of any other game I've played. I mean, in fact, my cousin Dennis refuses to play it because
I see that.
It works him up too much.
Yeah.
So you only have 10 minutes to escape the temple and you have to explore, meaning you're rolling dice. Everybody has 5 dice and you have to have certain die faces in order to flip over a tile to explore a new room. Once you're in that room, you have to have keys or torches or whatever to interact and take gems off. And you're trying to take gems off of this central tile because however many gems are left there, that's the number of keys you have to roll once you find the exit in order to get out.
On your 5 dice.
On your 5 dice. However many gems are left plus 1. First of all, you got to find the exit, and then you've got to get everybody has to get to the exit, and everybody has to escape in order for you to win. But the caveat is halfway through at the 5-minute mark, the gong sounds and the music is getting intense. There's a CD, there's a soundtrack to this, which really adds to that anxiety level. That gong happens, and then everybody has to get back to the starting chamber before the door closes. They have this door sound as door closing. If you're caught outside of that starting chamber, then you lose a die permanently for the game. And then all while you're doing this, there are black masks. If a black mask is rolled, your die is stuck on that black mask until you roll a golden mask to get rid of it. So there are many, many, many times that we've had people that are completely blacked out. They have all these black masks, can't move. They're like, I'm stuck. Someone come help me. So someone has to get in there, share a golden mask with them so they can get out. And they do have ways to make this a little more complex as well. They have cursed cards. So if you go into a cursed room, you have to draw a cursed card. Some of them you can't talk. One of them has, if you have to play with your hand on your forehead. One of them is if a die rolls off the table,
You can't pick it up.
you can't pick it up. It's lost for the game. That's why you should have a game topper so that never happens.
At GameToppersLLC.com.
But overall, it's a fun experience. And the fact that you're having that experience in 10 minutes is really cool. There are a few games I think that really fit into that, where you can have that much fun and that much excitement, and then it's over. And it's like, okay, well, we can play again or we can move on to something else. And it's great. It's a fun game.
And I love the day and time that we live that we don't need to worry about that CD anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a YouTube track of it, so you can always use that.
Yeah, that's what we usually use now is, the CD. Having to pull out a big boom box and...
Yeah. What is that even anymore?
We still have one,
box.
just in case. But yeah, I think I have a Hello Kitty one in my game room.
Oh, I've seen that one. Wasn't that yours, Doug?
I don't think people are going to understand that inside joke. It's Amara's, and one night I pretended it was mine, and it led to a whole bunch of mad Amara.
Yes, it did.
So yeah, it's my Hello Kitty boombox. That is awesome. That's a good pick. Now, I've only played that one a couple times, and I will say I enjoyed it. It's one that I kind of wish we got to the table more, but it does kind of feel like a little bit more of that like party filler kind of game, and we don't have a lot of occasion to get that kind of game to the table.
That's true.
And I kind of wish we did. Like, we need to maybe make some time to get more of those types of games to the table.
Yeah,
That's why we need to cull out some of the old stuff so that we can keep the treasures, the diamonds in the rough.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, my number 4 is a fantastic little game called So Clover. And this game, I'm telling you, it just works. And it works for everyone. It's just fun. And the thing is even if you're a little reticent, I've had people who maybe it's like, I don't know if I really want to play this. It's a word game. It's a little bit, it's definitely fits in the party game category, that kind of thing. But even if you've got somebody who doesn't necessarily want to play it, they'll still gather around the table to make the word guesses.
Yeah.
Right. So this game, there's 6 of these little clover trays, and then there's a spot in the middle of each one for 4 cards. And the cards are square cards with a hollowed out square center. So they fit in, they kind of lodge into these places in certain orientation. You shuffle up this big deck of cards, give everybody 4. They have to randomly put them out there on the clover. And so basically what's going to happen is each clover leaf, you're going to have 2 words that line up with that. And you've got to find just a 1 word something that links those 2 random words together, a clue that links them together. And then you're going to do the same thing for the other 4 clover sides. Okay, well then you're going to throw in a random card, which is where things get really interesting, because you're going to have your 4 cards, you throw in a 5th, you shuffle them all together, turn it upside down, and then when everybody's done that, one at a time, you go through them and see if you can figure out what words line up with the clues that people wrote. And
this is where hilarity ensues.
And it is. And you wouldn't think it's that funny, but it's absolutely hilarious, because you learn a lot about people, and you learn a lot. And I'm just maybe going to make reference to one of our good friends, Dave, who maybe is dyslexic or has some issues reading, because he totally misread some of the words. Or you get what the best part, though, okay, is that the person who is, the person who wrote the clues, when their board is up to be solved, they can't say anything. They can't use gestures. They can't communicate in any way, shape, or form.
No heavy sighs, no eye rolls.
Exactly. And so you're sitting there trying to suss out what they've put down, and you can just tell it just the frustration of just like, why can't you guys get this? You know, and I've had people had to stand up and walk away. She's like, you guys are idiots. Like, people get mad, people laugh. It's just a game that creates such fun memory and a fun form of tension at the table as you're trying to get those clues figured out.
Absolutely.
and solve that puzzle. It just works. So Clover just works. And I'm not a party game guy at all, but I will pretty much always be up for a game of So Clover. And I think as a gateway game, it does a fantastic job at bringing people into the hobby in a welcoming, fun way that creates a really fun experience at the table.
And the later that you play this game, the better it gets.
Oh, for sure. The more sleep deprived people are,
Absolutely.
the better. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to recap, in case you were wondering at home, Cheryl's number 4 was Azul.
Good pick.
Yeah. So my number 3, we're done with number 4s. My number 3 is a rather new game to me, one that, in fact, I just taught it to my wife yesterday, and that is Framework. Framework is a great game. It's very simple to teach. You can open up the rules and say, hey, these are the things that are on the frames or on the tiles, and the tile will either contain frames or it'll contain tasks, or it may contain a combination of both. There's 4 different types of frames, so that means there's 4 different types of tasks. You're trying to orthogonally connect the path of frames back to a task of the same frame type. Some of these tiles may have multiple frames on it, so that chain can spread out and go different directions. Some of these tasks will be either one type of frame or another, or there are some tasks that are a combination, so it can be this and or this. You can go from either something as simple as 3, and maybe even 2. I think these go as simple as 2 frames up to as many as 8 frames. And there's sometimes that they will have one that you have to have 6 of this frame. And then if you do that, then you only have to have 1 of this other frame connected. But you can't do the easier task until you've done the more complex task. Very, very simple game. And as you're opening it up and challenging it out, there's going to be tiles that are dropped each round, 1 more than the number of players. The first player is going to take one, add it to their board or their tableau, and then the next person is going to take one and add it to theirs. And then whoever the first player is, or whoever the active player is going to take that last remaining tile and add it to their board as well. You go around, first person to complete 22 tasks is the winner. And I'm terrible at this game.
Oh, wow.
I don't think I've won it yet.
All right.
I've played it almost a dozen times. And I'm yet to win this game. But it is very fun, very easy to learn, and I think very accessible.
I agree. I liked it. I only played it the one time, but I really did like it.
Well, my number 3 is the same as one of Doug's games further up his list. Actually, you're number 1. So
it is. Oh, yeah. I just noticed
I'm going to refrain from diving into my number 3 until we get to your number 1.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, then that will take us to my number 3. Now, I picked this one because I have had such incredible success introducing it to new players. I think the board and the components have a real wow factor, and it's a simple game to teach. It only clocks in at a 1.46 on the complexity rating. This is Camel Up. This is the new edition, right?
Second edition.
But Camel Up, you pull out the board, and it's got those nice little, that pop-up oasis with the palm trees and everything.
That's a very nice touch.
Right? And then everything that comes in that game is great. The little pyramid dice roller is fun and tangible and adds a really fun component. The dice are colorful and neat. The camels are that thick, kind of heavy weight piece that are just fun and colorful and sit on the board really nice. There's the coins that are plastic. It's just got a really fun production and tactility to it that I think immediately just kind of pulls people in. It's like, ooh, what's this? Oh, a camel race. Okay, I'm in. What's going on? And then you go into the teach, and it's very simple, right? You're just going to show people how you roll dice and apply it to the camels and show them the different things they can do on a turn, which are, you can basically, you can cheer for the camels, you can roll a dice, you can turn in your bets. There's just a few simple things that you can do on a turn. And there's definitely some emergent strategy. Like after you've played it a few times, you kind of realize like, ooh, if I time this right, I could really, make some money or, bet on the right camel, because you're going to bet for each leg of the race and then an overall winner and loser as well. And that process, I mean, people have been betting on races for a lot longer than board games have been around. And there's just something inherently fun about that process. And when you can capture all that fun and put it in this, neat little accessible, well-produced box, I think it really draws people in. I think it's a great gateway game. It's one I really recommend. If you've got somebody out there that you're wanting to introduce a really fun, board game to, consider pulling this one off the shelf to introduce them, because it works. It really does. It's a great gateway game.
And the insert for it is amazing.
Yes. As a side note, the insert is wonderful.
And the pyramid's just way too cool.
It is. Yeah. That pyramid is super sweet.
It's the funnest way to roll dice.
It is. Every game should come with a dice pyramid.
I agree.
All
That puts
right.
us to number 2, Nathan.
So my wife's number 3 was Ohanomi, by the way. My number 2, killer bunnies, huh?
What? Wow.
Wow. Killer bunnies. Tell us more. Killer bunnies and the quest for the magic carrot. That's what it says in the notes,
It
Nathan.
does say that in the notes. I didn't put it there, but thank you. That is a great game. A little bit beefy.
A little bit beefy.
It's a stage 2 gateway game.
Yikes.
But my number 2 is New York Zoo. You're trying to build zoos. You're trying to build enclosures in your zoo and fill up your zoo first. There's a simple track that you're going. There's an elephant that marks the current position of where everybody's going. And on your turn, you can move it up to 4 spaces forward. And you can choose to stop at either animal gathering, where you're going to gather 2 different kind of animals. You can either put it in one of your animal houses, or you can put it in one of your enclosures. Or if you don't have any enclosures and you have only animals, then you're going to want to get an enclosure and add that enclosure to your zoo. I think there's a dozen stacks of enclosures that go around the board. They're going to start off with large enclosures, which are nice because they eat up a lot of space. However, you need to fill that with animals. And once you fill that with animals, you'll take all those animals off. You'll return them to the supply. You'll put one in your animal house if you want to keep it. And then you're able to move on to a new enclosure. You can go back and revisit that enclosure if you want, and you can put animals in it. Early in the game, you're going to definitely avoid that because of the size of those enclosures. But as you go down through those stacks, you will find that the enclosures get smaller and smaller and smaller until they get down to 4 spaces. And then you can cycle through those fairly quick. And then there are 6 different spots on the board that animals will breed. And so if you have 2 like animals in an enclosure, when you pass that breeding cycle, then each of those enclosures that you have in your zoo that have 2 of that matching animal are going to produce a third.
2 becomes 3.
2 becomes 3. And you can only ever add 1, even though you might have
3 becomes 4.
Yeah.
6 becomes 7.
Yeah. There's not 6 doesn't become 9. It's just one enclosure is going to have 1 birth in it. And you just have to plan for that. Try to keep 2 animals in each of your enclosures to get that to grow. Very easy game. Provides a lot of challenge. Every time you complete an enclosure, you also get to add an amusement park feature. And some of those are big at first. And then those polyomino shapes will slowly get smaller as they get used up. And then towards the end of the game, when all the others are used up, there's a 1 space square that you might need to use to fill in spaces, fill in gaps in your zoo.
Which is really genius, right? Because in the early game, you want those big tiles to take up space in your zoo. And then as you get toward the end, you really want those smaller ones because you're trying to fill in all the little weird gaps that you left as you were throwing enclosures in. So yeah, it works out really good.
Yeah, and this is a great game that I think provides enough challenge that brings you back again and again. And New York Zoo is just awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And this almost made my top 5. It's probably my number 6. This is one when my mom first started coming over every 2 weeks to play games with us. This was the first game that we brought to the table for her to learn. And she still talks about it. She's like, what's that one with the animals? We need to play that one again.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a phenomenal game to teach new players. And honestly, I'm a gamer and I still love to play it. It's a fun game.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good pick. The one caveat that I do have with this is that you kind of need a gamer or somebody who's familiar with it to set it up. You would not want, if you're listening to this as like, okay, I want to get into games. What are some good games for me to go buy and learn to get me into the hobby? I don't know that this is the right one, because setup for this is a little more complex, because you've got to go through and the tiles have to be set up in the right order, the right way. There's just a little bit that's fiddly about the setup. So as long as somebody who's familiar with it sets it up, I think it's a great gateway game. I like it.
Let's be honest. Those looking to be in the hobby are not
You're
listening.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I realized that as I was saying it, but it needed to be said.
It needed to be said. You're absolutely right. It did. But we should also consider that when we're trying to bring people into the hobby, this would be a great game.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You could set it up for them. They would enjoy it. They'd want to play it again.
100%.
Then they'll go out and buy it along with 5 other games.
Yes.
And Cheryl's number 2 is actually Andy's number 1.
So we'll keep that a secret
So
for
keep
now.
it a secret for now. But Andy, what was she? Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
All right. My number 2 is a game that this is how I got my girls in particular into gaming. And that is the DC deck building game. I introduced this. This is like the first big game, heavier game, not Candyland style game that I taught my kids. And I don't know how many times it was, hey, let's play the superhero game. It's called the superhero game at my house, not the DC deck builder. But they, to this day, like Amara will pull that huge monster box with all those cards in it off the shelf, and they will set it up. Caden he now loves it. When I was first teaching my girls, he really, really wanted to play. And I'm like, no, dude, you can't play until you learn how to read, because he was struggling. He hated reading. I'm like, nope, until you learn how to read, you can't play. And that was some motivation, because guess what? He learned how to read fairly quickly after that, because he really wanted to play that game. But DC Deck Builder, this has had a place at our game table for years and years. We have had so much fun with this. A lot of fun exploring the different expansions that have come out. We always tend to go back to the first 2, the base game, not really expansions, but go back to the base game. That's kind of our family favorite. But just the simplicity of it, it is really straightforward. You have cards out in the middle that you can purchase. You count up your power. You can buy cards with your power. You can defeat the supervillains with your power. You can buy the kicks that are in there, and they just go to your discard pile, which is just allowing you to do. Some of them will have extra abilities that are really straightforward and simple. Other ones are just going to give you more power, which allows you to buy more stuff or defeat those supervillains. As soon as the supervillain stack is gone, the game ends, and then you count up points. Really straightforward. One of the simplest deck builders I've seen, and yet it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, DC Deck Builder is great. I look at my daughters, their in gateway game was probably Dominion, very similar, but DC Deck Builder is great for that, providing those mechanics for a deck building game and providing that fun DC universe.
DC Deck Builder is like crack cocaine.
Is it?
Because the first hit's free, and then you just want more. More deck building, please.
I took this similarly to your Lucky Numbers. When I took this to Lydia's classroom several years ago, it was also one that, no, I want to play that one. It was like 10 boys that were trying to get on this game. It's like, okay, it doesn't play 10 guys. You'll have to jump in on the next game. Okay. What's that game called? How do I get it? How much does it cost?
Theme alone draws that in.
Will you tell my mom and dad I want it for Christmas? Yeah. We've had that before. Yeah, that's great. My number 2 is Trails of Tucana. I picked this one for a lot of the same reasons, Nathan, that you picked Railroad Inc. It fits into that really great sort of roll and write, flip and write style game. And what's so amazing about Trails of Tucana is that as long as you've got enough paper to go around, you can play with just about as many people as you want. In fact, I think during our New Year's party this last year, we had like 12 people, I think, at the table. Everyone can play at once. Now, it does get a little bit complicated when you're playing with the objectives in there, because it technically is only supposed to go to 8. However, there are some ways that you can get around that. But give everyone a sheet of paper. You label the little villages around the outside. You flip over a combination of terrains. So there's like sand, water, rock, forest, right? And you're just keep flipping over a combo of those, and then you can put a trail between any two hexes that have those two terrains that they share a side. And you're just trying to build terrains through the middle of the island to collect all these little idols and connect your villages. And it's super simple, but the puzzle is always fun. I mean, I've played this probably 30, 40 times. I'm not sick of it. I love it. I still break it out all the time. It's a family favorite. We take it to parties. It's small enough I can travel with it. It's just a great, great game. And again, for a lot of the same reasons, those roll and write, flip and write style games, they just tend to be a little more inviting. Just a little more like, oh, okay, this is a fun mechanism. I didn't know games could do this. Tell me more. I want to maybe experience more than this. So that they act as a great gateway experience.
Trails of Tucano is great. I bought a laminator. I need to laminate boards.
Yeah.
And now that you're talking, I should probably laminate more than the 8. Because
I would recommend it because you can play with more and oftentimes need to.
Yeah.
So also, this game is currently out of print. Now, I'm sure at some point they'll bring it back, but if you run out of paper, you're probably not getting new sheets anytime soon. You print them off online, but you're not going to get a professionally produced pad anytime soon.
Yeah. All right. So that brings us to number 1.
Number 1. How exciting.
It is exciting. So my number 1 is Seven Wonders Architects. This game is great. Goes up to 7 players. It is very simple. You'll hand each player an architect, and inside that little container, the little coffin box, you'll open it up. It has a wonder that they're going to put face down, and on the back side of that, it'll have a requirement of what it requires to flip that that section of your wonder over. So it's either 2 of the same good, 2 different goods, 3 of the same good, 3 different goods, options similar to that. And the game will go until the first player will complete their wonder. But the mechanics of the game is you have a stack on your left and you have a stack on your right. And then there's a stack in the middle of the table. On your turn, you can choose a card from one of those 3 stacks. You'll put it face up in front of you. If it completes a section of your wonder, you're going to complete a section of your wonder. Otherwise, it'll go in front of you. And if there's 3 different scientific cards, if it's one of those, and you have a matching pair of scientific cards, then you can get a token that will give you some bonuses throughout the game. Or if you have 3 altogether, you can discard 3 to draw a token, and then you're going to have some military that's going on in there. So you're going to get all of the vibe from Seven Wonders in a much more digestible pill that is very fun. And Seven Wonders Architects is great. Just picked up the expansion, 7 Architects Medals. Haven't opened that yet. I need to open that up so I can see if I can incorporate that in there. But this game is always a winner every time I hit. In fact, last time you had youth at your house, Andy, this was one I brought over to help you out. And the kids loved that, and the adults loved that were playing, because they didn't think they were going to have any enjoyment there. But there was 3 adults and 4 kids, and they all very much enjoyed it.
So, I appreciate you doing that. And I had a similar experience when I'm going to talk about a different game, which is also a gateway game, was on the list of my gateway games. Didn't make my top 5, but I got the adults. They actually kicked all the youth off the table, and we're playing Catapult Feud.
Oh, nice. This is one I still want to learn.
With just the adults. So once they started lobbing cannonballs at each other's castles, it was on. You had 4 fully grown men lobbing cannonballs at each other. It was actually pretty hilarious to watch.
Yeah, this game just reeks fun, right? It's like very similar to Loop and Louie, except for a 2-player version. Very interesting. I want to learn how to play this. I'm sure it's very simple.
It is. Yeah.
I have everything that's out so far. You have 2 sets of it, so you can play up to 4 people. This game looks cool.
It is a lot of fun. All right, so that leads to my number 1. My number 1, which is the same as Cheryl's number 2, is Project L. Now, I'm a theme guy. I love theme, which is kind of funny that this is my number 1 because there is no theme at all to this game.
Color is a theme, right? No, it's not.
Not really. But we have introduced this game to a lot of people, and it has been a hit every single time. I've taken up to my dad's house when we've had family get-togethers, played it with my nieces and nephews. It's been just extremely well received. We've had some people in our neighborhood that have come down, an older couple that likes to, we go out to dinner with them about once a month or so, and we introduced this to them. And when I said, hey, we're going to play a game, both of them were just like, oh, yeah, no.
I got to go do my hair.
Yeah, something like that, right? They were gracious enough to sit down and try it. I could tell that they weren't really excited about it, and they actually had a good time. So it's interesting, seeing people that have this preconceived idea of what a board game is, and they're like, yeah, I'm not interested at all, to actually sit down and play something, and you choose something that's digestible. And when they actually have fun, it's like, okay, now that was actually really cool. Let's play that again. That's fun to watch. I really enjoy seeing that, when it is to see someone that is completely, their mind has changed from, I hate board games, I am not interested at all, to, yeah, that wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I could play that again.
Yeah, it starts with that too. That wasn't bad. And you're like, yeah, you totally like that.
But Project L has fit that. And now they've come out with the expansion to add a little bit of complexity to it, which has been, is fun for the gamer side of things, which once, kind of like Doug said, having that option to add some complexity to it is nice. But the base game is still great. It's a lot of fun.
And the table presence alone, the tactileness of it, is very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to mention, that the tactility is a huge factor. And I think more and more tactility is becoming a factor in gateway games, because you kind of give, if you give somebody a great game, but you also give them something fun to play with.
Yeah, true.
You immediately start to see those cell phones get put away. It's like, oh, this is kind of fun. All right, cell phone's going back in the pocket. This is cool. Yeah. Okay, what's going on? And that's definitely what Project L does.
Yeah, I would agree. And you say that, and I don't think I've ever seen someone with their phone out when we've played Project L. So
yeah, no, you're too busy putting, even when it's not your turn, you're building shapes in front of you. You're
for sure. Yeah, a little mini game going on.
Yep.
Yeah,
I love it. Great pick. Well, my number one is my number one. This was Andy's number 3, and it sits at number 1 because it has just been absolutely tried and true for the last probably 3 years. I know plenty of people who have had this in their Amazon cart before the game even ended. It hits every single time. Now, technically, it comes in 2 flavors, but the flavor you need to go get is the Gollum edition. This is Century Gollum edition.
As opposed to Century Spice Road.
Spice Road, correct. This one just hits. Now, the complexity on this is a 1.69. So for a gateway game, it's maybe just a little bit up there, but it's still well below that 2.0 weight scale rating. And the gameplay is incredibly simple. On your turn, you're either going to play a card, buy a golem, or pick up your hand, pick up your cards. And the way that the market works, it just flows really easy. The way the golems come out, it's very clear to see what needs to be paid. That puzzle of playing your cards and trying to get your gems upgraded and get the right combo, it just hits every time. And one of the things that I love about this game is that because the actions in the game are so simple, even at 4 or 5 players, which this will go up to, the turns just go really fast around the table. I've had new people looking down and they're, okay, all right, well, I'm going to do this. And then they're kind of looking at things or whatever. And you're like, hey, it's your turn again. What? Wow. Okay. And and then you get in a rhythm of going around the table and everyone's just kind of snappy, taking turns. It's awesome. I need to start taking commissions for this, because when I introduce it to new people, I really do have many people who add this to the cart before the game is even done.
It's kind of like me, and that's not a hat.
Yeah.
In fact, so speaking of That's Not a Hat, so I had a party with my coworkers and we played That's Not a Hat. And one of my coworkers the next day said, dude, you should have had like copies of those just sitting there, because he's like, my wife went and bought it. And then one of the other guys, yeah, my wife went and bought that. And then another guy came up, yeah, my wife went and ordered that. I'm like, dang, I should have.
Yeah.
Oh, you liked it? Well, funny thing, I've got copies right here for sale.
Could have made a few bucks.
That's awesome. Is that all of us?
That's it. That's all of us.
All right. And
Wraps up the list.
Just to mention, Cheryl's number 1 was her all-time favorite game, which is Patchwork, which I think she made that her number 1 just
because she loves the game.
Because she loves the game.
Yeah. You could say, what's your favorite Take That game? Patchwork. Because it feels like a
What's your favorite dungeon crawl? Patchwork.
Patchwork. Yep.
I did have just a couple of I was going to throw these out. They're not really honorable mentions, and they're not really even number 6 and 7, but I was going to just throw out really quick. If you're introducing new games to people who love art I think Dixit is a good choice. I was just gonna toss that out. It's not necessarily on my top 5, but if your audience is artistic in nature, if they like that abstract art, Dixit's pretty simple. This is a very, very simple game, but it gives you so much visually to look at and digest, and provides a pretty fun puzzle. So if art is a thing, I would just throw out Dixit.
This is a fun one to play with my son Carson because he has a hard time not showing his cards to people. In fact, there was a game that every single round he would show his cards like, Carson, stop showing your cards to everybody. Carson, stop showing your cards to everybody. And finally, there was a round where he actually held his cards like, hey, good job. You didn't show your cards. And he got all excited and dabbed and showed his cards to everybody when he dabbed.
Oh, that is fantastic. That is so Carson.
That is so Carson. Yes.
And the other one, I was just going to throw out one more. If you need sort of a next step game, like maybe you're introducing games to people who like they're familiar with some of those games, like they've played Catan and they've played whatever, but they need something just a little bit more to bring them in, sort of that next level, next step gamer game. I actually really recommend After Us. And I have used that to bring a few people into the hobby. My sister in particular actually sat her down and taught her that. And she was like, oh, games are really cool. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah. After Us is a great game.
Yeah.
I have a few of those as well that I'd like to talk about. And one that you talked about for your highlights was Quacks of Quedlinburg. This is one we've also taught several people that are not really gamers and they've really enjoyed it. And then Gizmos is also one that
great.
We've taught a lot of new players. Now, I found it interesting because Potion Explosion, when I did my search for Gateway games, I did weight of 0 to 2 when I did the search. Potion Explosion falls into that category, but I don't feel like it's supposedly a lighter weight than the Quacks of Quedlinburg. And I don't know if it's necessarily, I mean, the idea of it's pretty simple, but it's seeing the patterns I think that people have a hard time with on the marbles.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it seems more complex than it is when you're playing it. It is really simple. You're just taking marbles, but seeing what's going to explode, I think, is what people maybe have a harder time with Potion Explosion.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Yeah, so the other one that I wanted to say as a stage 2 is Heat, Pedal to the Metal.
Yeah.
I think this is a great game to very basic racing game. The mechanics are very simple to master. It's all about you're going to play a card. If you're in gear 1, if you want to upshift, you're going to play 2 cards. If you want to skip and upshift twice, you have to take a heat. And this is all about hand management, but the mechanics are very simple. The play is very easy, and it provides a whole slew of discovery. If you get past the just doing random maps, you can start going through that campaign series, and not necessarily a campaign, but that circuit of races. There's so much that Heat, Pedal to the Metal provides in such a quick, easy to learn game.
Well, that is an awesome list of Gateway games, guys.
Yeah.
I think that you can't go wrong with introducing any of these to someone who may be interested in starting gaming, or even someone who dislikes games altogether, and maybe you want to pique that interest a little bit.
Change their mind.
This is a good list of games.
There's something in there for everyone, I swear.
Yes.
Let us know if there's a Gateway game that we missed that has worked for you and your table. I'd be interested to know if maybe it's something we haven't played before, something that could find a home at one of our shelves. Let us know.
We're always looking for new board game residents.
Yes.
All right. Until next time.
We'll see you at the game table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.